So, okay, that beeping is driving me absolutely crazy, and I'm saving. Alright, now we gotta mess with the switches, I think. Alright, I actually think I have to investigate the switches again. There we go.
All right, let's try pushing both buttons simultaneously.
The two buttons are on opposite panels, so there's no way one person can push them both alone. But if two of us work together, it might do it.
That's it, Gillian. It makes perfect sense. It's the same system they used to use in nuclear missile silos in the late 20th century. Eliminates the risk of one man going nuts and acting alone.
Well, it's hard to be sure, but let's give it a try anyway. I've got button 1. Random, you push number 2. You ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3.
Come on!
You did it! Door number 3 opened.
With safety measures like that, they must have had a good reason for wanting to keep it closed.
And how? I don't think it's a little suspicious that random Hajil knows, you know, nuclear missile protocol from, like, the 20s. Well, actually, it should be from, like, the 40s and 50s. Well, now that we're over that hump. I like being able to do that without, like, whistling and feedbacking and all sorts of stuff. It's kind of nice.
Good God!
I read 4 human skeletons in this room.
It's their morgue!
Perhaps victims of the Snatchers?
Well, it doesn't look like whoever put them here was too worried about making sure they would rest in peace.
No, it doesn't. These have got to be their victims.
This is probably where they hide the bodies of the originals they snatched from places like Outer Heaven.
They probably picked Outer Heaven because it gets a lot of VIP traffic. Plus, during masquerade time, they could work the place and still keep their identities secret.
Yeah, and the guy who set up the link between them and Outer Heaven was
dogs.
Freddy, that taxi driver. They must have gone after him not because of who he was, but what he did. After all, with a taxi, there's plenty of chances to milk your customers for information. That's probably how they learned about Outer Heaven and Plato's Cavern.
I've been wondering what they had done with the bodies.
Want to hide a book? What better place than the library? Need to hide a body? How about the morgue?
And for them, keeping the bodies hidden is crucial. I mean, if somebody who's supposed to be dead is out walking the streets, it wouldn't be too hard to figure out that something screwy is going on.
That means that if we can figure out who these bodies were, then we've just nailed 4 snatchers.
Yeah, 4. I love the music here too. It's so mellow. Except for the background. But I mean like the little begin like that. Anyway, enough of that music jamming. I'm gonna save real quick before I start. Ready? That'll be important later. You mean it rusted? That's hot. tube liner. Assume that's some sort of future train. Eat large groups. This is actually interesting. This is how a lot of people actually forensically figure out time of death, by what insects have laid at what point of decay. So it's rather interesting to take a look at it and say that, you know, oh, if this type of insect has made its house inside the body, then therefore the body's been here long enough for their eggs to culture and the maggots to come out. Which is just an interesting thing to say, that someone actually figured out how long that took. I mean, it's not an exact science, you never know. I mean, temperature and humidity have a lot to do with it too. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to read this out to you because I think it's interesting. The insects infesting a decomposing body can be divided into 8 large groups. Each of those groups works on the body for roughly 15 days, making an 8 times 15 day or 4-month cycle. As such, an analysis of the variety, number, and size of the organisms on the body allow a rather accurate estimation of which group is currently present. In other words, you can figure out how long the victim's been dead without analyzing the body itself, right? On this particular body, flies have laid eggs, and the maggots have grown into adult flies, so it has been less than 30 days since death. As for the other 3 bodies, 1 full cycle has been completed, so at least 4 months have passed. Interesting. Let's figure out how they died. Alright, now let's figure out who these guys are. So they took out their teeth? Oh, well, he clearly has some teeth. Maybe they ripped out the molars? Huh, so they busted up some teeth. Yeah, I think it would just be easier if he had a DNA, take it to the other room, use a DNA sequencer, and figure out whose DNA it was. This is kind of a pain in the ass.
Now performing simulated reconstruction of the head and facial features of each of the 4 victims. Commencing with victim number 1. Now performing craniometric analysis. X-ray and sagittal X-ray, magnetic resonance imaging, and positron CT data gathered. Complete cranial data now being compiled. Craniometric analysis complete. Now commencing reconstruction. First, victim's age. Estimate based on 1. Presence or absence of cranial fontanelles and chroma of epicranial sutures. 2. Area of facial region and cranium. 3. Height of upper and lower jaw and development of alveolar part. And 4. Location of cranial center of gravity. Next, victim's sex. Estimate based on 1. Overall size of cranium. 2. Parietal bone angle. And 3. Development of splachnocranium. Lastly, victim's race. Estimate based on 1. Overall cranial configuration. 2. Volume of intracranial cavity. And 3. Mass of the skull. Now commencing soft feature reconstruction based on averaged results of above analysis. Reconstructing. Initial phase completed. Margin of error on estimate of victim's race, 10% based on use of average values. Now adding postulated hair and eye features. Reconstruction of head of first victim completed.
It's Freddie Nielsen.
Moving on to second victim. Now commencing reconstruction of features of victim number 2.